Hello there, people and listeners of the Hungry podcast. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to welcome Jim Cregan onto the podcast. Jim is founder of Jimmy's Iced Coffee. I'm sure we all know very, very well. Jimmy's are one of my favorite brands. Genuinely, I've been slurping up the goodness for a long, long time now. They make absolutely delicious, ready to drink iced coffee. This was launched in 2011 after Jim took a trip to Australia where he discovered the good stuff, brought it back to the UK, found the business with his sister Suze. And since then, they've had some absolutely insane listings, Selfridges, Asda, Tesco, M&S. And I suppose the reason I'm really, really excited for this one, Jim, is you really have kind of inspired us at Manny Life to be a super bold and unapologetically human brand. And I think that's a very, very, very hard thing to do, which we'll jump in and, I suppose, explore in this episode. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on today, mate. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and what lovely, kind words. That's really, really, that's very, very touching. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. No, genuinely, I think your coffee has the ability to kind of pull me out the abyss of like a rancid hangover, and always just, yeah, it does make me feel good, but the brand has the ability to really kind of, yeah, make you feel good. And it's a very hard thing to do.
Usage occasion is hangovers. That's when I found them so useful in Oz, when you go and drink Goon, which is that like box of white wine, and it's like the cheapest stuff. It gives you the worst headache. And when you're sleeping in the back of a van and it suddenly gets to like 32 degrees by 7:30 in the morning and you're covered in flies, you're just like, oh my God, I have to have a nice coffee right now. Otherwise I'm going to die. So yeah, it's quite nice to be able to bring that back, because we still have stinking hangovers here, just less the flies and less the 32 degrees heat.
Mine's usually going to like a BP station to get a sandwich as well. I'm just like, I need one of those bad boys, pop it, and then you're good to go. So where I want to start is I watched this amazing video on YouTube, and it's you in the desert in Dubai. And there's this, I don't know how to describe it, like a palace almost. And you said in this video that you and your sister Suze, who's your co-founder business partner, used to skate in this palace. I'd love for you to please I want to try and dig into the relationship you've got with Suze and your childhood in Dubai. I'd love to kind of talk about skating in that palace. What was that like? And how did it forge such a strong relationship with Suze?
So I'm just trying to recall which bit that was, because I remember we wouldn't have skated at a palace, but we would have skated at what was being built, which was the new American University in Dubai, which basically looked like a palace. It's like absolutely beautiful. And it's every skateboarder's dream, in terms of the fact that there's no security guards, number one. The whole place is wide open, and there's no rain, and the floor is marble. So it's just like, it's almost a joke in terms of how beautiful it was. And unfortunately for me, I wasn't actually all that good at skating, so I couldn't actually use the architecture as best as I possibly could. But just rolling around and doing big drops and just having really, really good fun with my buddies was where it's at. And I didn't actually do any skating with Suze. But in terms of living in Dubai, it was great, because back in the 80s, it was so, and it's so nice for you to bring this up. It was so expat, and we lived in Sharjah, which is the emirate next to Dubai, and it was kind of like the poorer emirate, and I guess it probably still is. But there was just a gang of us kind of expats who lived in Sharjah. So you were all very close to a very small number of people, because everyone else on our road, we would live on a street with the local Arabic community. And as much as you want to integrate with the Arabic community, they're very, very private. So it's not like people just come over and say, hey, we're having a barbecue, do you want to come over? That's just not how it works over there. So you're kind of not forced to spend time with your siblings, but I just, I grew up with spending a lot of time with Suze, and a lot of the time would just be outdoors, and we'd just be creating a load of mischief. We'd go down to there's a sports club where all the expats just go and hang out, and so we'd go and get into golf or play rugby, or just go to the pool and kind of hang out. And it was a wonderful place to grow up. Just sunshine every day, beautiful heat, shorts and flip-flops 24/7, and then you come back to the UK and you're like, what is this? This is a joke.
No, for sure. So out of curiosity, how did you end up in Dubai in the first place?
So mum and dad grew up all over the world. My mum was born and raised in Singapore. She was there for 17 years. My dad, when he was 16, joined the army, and he went to Oman very, very quickly to go and do a load of mapping. He ended up meeting my mum in Greece, and he asked her to marry him after 2 days. She said yes. And then they moved to Dubai in 1975, something like that, 74. So they were actually in Dubai for 34 years in total. And what brought them to Dubai, I can't even remember. I think dad just got a job, and he was just like, yep, that sounds great, let's go. Because they really loved traveling. And that was great. So then they had Suze, then they had me, and I lived there till I was 18. And mum's real home is Essex, and dad's home is Bournemouth. And so we came back to dad's side because my mum doesn't have any brothers and sisters, and dad's kind of family's quite big, so they were all here. So we came back here, and I've been here since I was 18, essentially, kind of on and off, living in various places, people's back gardens and sheds and boats and flats, and finally a home that we bought just about 5 years ago. Yeah, it's been fun.
No, that's so interesting because, as I said in the introduction, you're one of the boldest brands I know. And what you've said there about your dad just getting married within 2 days, I think you do kind of pick up the traits of your parents. And it's a very bold move. Like, look, we're in Greece. Fuck it, let's get married. Bosh, let's move to Dubai. I love that. It's 100%. So.
And well, I was actually talking to my sister about this the other day, because my dad only died a couple of years ago. And we were just talking about the difference between him and my mum. And like, my dad would always be like, Jim, just go for it. Just absolutely go for it. You'll love it. It'll be great. And if it doesn't work, well, hell, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's going to work. So you just go for it. And my mum's far more kind of, she doesn't like taking big risks. She just likes knowing what's her thing. She's got her parameters. And dad's just like, oh man, you got one life just to go and do your thing. And we both really admire and miss that about dad, because it was a really cool thing. So nice of you to bring that up. Thank you.
No, it's no problem. It's funny enough, like I've probably got it the other way around. My mum's just like, just go for it, whereas my dad's a bit more reserved. Out of your parents' traits, would you say is Sue's more reserved, and you're the bold one, or how does that work? I suppose if we boil it down on a micro level at like a business sense, day to day, are you the bold one, Sue's reserved, or how would you say that dynamic works?
It's been interesting, because that has kind of gone, and we've both been bold at different times. So I was really bold at the very beginning, because it was my idea, and I came back from Oz, and I'd had no real skills whatsoever. I have certain skills. I will find you. And I was just like, I thought I was basically, the way I describe it is like, I was jumping from a burning career building, and I did not want to go back into that building ever again. And that building was me being a laborer, and me dressing up to host music festivals, dressed up in weird clothes. And I was just like, I have no option but to go and do something great. And it's got to be big, and it's got to work. And this is my Eminem 8 Mile, failure's not an option, success is the only way forward, blah, blah, blah. And those were my bold days, the first few years of just not being afraid to talk to anyone or anything about what I wanted to do. And my sister was kind of new to all this, because Suze used to have a coffee shop, so she would just have her kind of not bubble, but it would be a small bit that she owned. And I was wanting to go and talk to the world about what we were doing. And as we've got, I think as Suze's experience has grown a lot more, she's become much more bold in the company. And I've just got so exhausted after however many years. Well, about after year 7 or 8, I just had to take a break. I was out of work for like 5 months. I've now become more, maybe I've become more reserved. I don't know, but I've also had 3 kids, and maybe because feel like I'm not getting old, but I just feel like I'm quite up for chilling. So that role reversal has happened over a period of time.
For sure. And what you said there about you were jumping from a burning career building, which I thought was brilliant, because I had kind of a similar situation pre-joining Money Life. But one of the guests, I interviewed Roger Wade the other week, who's founder of Box Park. Super interesting guy. And he was basically saying lots of founders, or his jump off point to set up Box Park is he'd been in New York, 3 failed, got kicked out of 3 jobs as a copywriter. And it was kind of make or break. But what he said, which I thought was really interesting, is lots of founders set up businesses to kind of deal with insecurities. I would love to, and look, maybe this is too personal, but I'd love to know when you were doing the kind of the laboring and the dressing up for the festivals, what some of those insecurities were. Because I think people listening to this will be either like, I'm in a corporate job that I hate and I need to set up a food brand, or you see what I mean? So what were some of the things that triggered that? I'd love to kind of explore that.
I'm totally more than happy to talk about it. Just the thought process about it. I think it was because I was getting to the age of 20. I think it was about 27 when I decided enough's enough, because I'd done the standard GCSEs, A levels. I'd been to university. I got a degree, and I genuinely felt like I was just kind of wasting my time. And I got to this kind of day. I was basically just being paid cash in hand, like £350 a week. And by the end of that weekend, it'd be gone. And this is very much when you lived in a cash day. There was no contactless and all that kind of stuff. And you see that wad of cash, and you're like, okay, that's me for the rest of the week. Okay, that's not enough, and that's not very exciting. But I've been breaking my back this week, mixing cement, dragging bricks and tiles upstairs, and I'm really crap at DIY. It's not my game at all. And then with the festival stuff is fun. But a friend of mine always said to me, never be the last one at a party. Always end on a high and leave early, and leave when the party's still happening. Go then. And I really took that on board. And we used to do the Secret Garden party. We'd do Glastonbury Festival, Camp Festival. We'd do all of the such great shows. But you always need to get out. And I kind of took that bit of advice as you actually also just need to get out, because if you don't want to be doing this job dressed up, shouting on microphones at the age of 40, 41, 50, because it's fine, it's totally fine. People do that. You look at the Cuban brothers, they're utterly hilarious, and that's in their blood, it's in their system. But mine was more of a, Jim, go up on stage, will you? And you're like, oh God, go on then. And then you do it, and then people are like, oh, you're quite fun at that, go again. And it's more of a, Jim will do it kind of thing. And I just thought I've definitely got a little bit more in me, and I just needed to take a full blown break. So when I had my kind of eureka moment of, fuck, I need to get the hell out of here, I was working with this old guy who's actually just passed away. I went to his funeral 2 days ago, and he was a really, really cool guy, bless him. But I was working for him, and I just had the worst day of my life there. And I got home and I was crying my head off. And my girlfriend was just like, what's the matter with you? And I was just like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm 27, and this guy's just got his builder's bum hanging out. And I'm just like, you've got a degree, you're a happy guy, you're enthusiastic, and you're getting paid £50 a day to move bricks around someone's house. Like, dude, come on. This is a fucking joke. Sorry for swearing. So I was like, we're leaving. We just got to go. So that's when we decided just to bugger off to Oz. And that's the beginning of the next chapter.
And this Oz, just for a timestamp, was?
We went in November, and it would have been 2008, 2009, something like that. 2008, I think it was, 2009.
Okay, cool. Because equally, I do think previous jobs set you up for success. So being a labourer is graft. Building a challenger brand is graft. So it kind of, in many ways, another thing Roger said is you connect the dots of your life. So being a grafter and a labourer obviously set you up for successes at Jimmy's because you got a graft. But then also I think in many ways, the festival stuff, it kind of set you up for this being bold. And we'll talk about it in a sec. Later on, is this rap video you've created. It's one of the best things I've ever seen, genuinely. But that you can almost see there's little sprinklings of your previous festival self in that video. So I do think in many respects, it's kind of that rising from the ashes moment, but it probably did set you up for success as well. at Jimmy's.
There's something really important in the fact of doing. You've got. I think it's important if you don't know. If it's a lot of people say, what do you want to do when you grow up, or like, what are you up to now? Like, what's your ideal job? And it's actually a case of saying what's your least ideal job? What's the last thing you ever want to do on earth, within reason? You actually get paid for, and it goes through PAYE, not like some assassin or something. But and we have kids come to the office from different schools, and we teach them about like life skills and say, what do you not want to do? And they're like, oh, I've never been asked that before. And it's like, well, do you want to work indoors or outdoors? And they're like, well, I hate being indoors. I'd like to work outdoors. Okay, so you don't want to work indoors. That's fine. So I never gave myself that kind of question. But if I said, what's the worst job I could possibly do now? It'd probably just be, it would either be working on a building site or working, I don't know, just doing something incredibly mundane that could possibly be taken over by a computer or a robot. And if you go and do that for a few months, it'll make you realize that you have to get off your arse and go and do something different, because otherwise you don't get a taste for how crap it really, really can be. So just go and do it for a few months anyway, realize how much better you are than doing that, and go and start something new, or go and join something that someone else has done that you're in favor of. And I think that's an important thing to do.
Absolutely. And I kind of had a similar story in that I left uni, no idea what I wanted to do. All my mates went into the grad program. I ended up delivering cheese around London. Like, it was in a man in a van, but I actually loved it, because whilst my mates were going to do the corporate stuff, I basically just listened to podcasts all day, every day. And I was like, okay, it almost those questions of like what you were saying of what's your least ideal job. All these podcasts were like, you don't have to do this corporate job. You could do potentially your own thing or go and work for a startup. And then it kind of serendipity fell into place, whereby I met Stu from Money Life. And I was like, so these things do kind of, this connecting the dots to your life theme really does kind of work. And I think it's what you've said there about what do you least like to do is, it's a good question to frame things, I think.
At least it's over there, and you know what it is, and the further away you can get from it, the more success you're going to have. And that can come in whatever measurement that you want, whether it's happiness, time, money, whatever, but you can keep it miles away.
For sure. And another thing, as you said at the beginning, you live in Bournemouth. So I actually went to Bournemouth Uni for a term, long story, but I love Bournemouth. It's loads of my great mates are still there, not there, but are still from my time at university there. Yeah. You champion the South Coast as a founder, and I've noticed that in your Instagram feed, the way you talk about it, and as I said, it goes back to this authenticity. I suppose the way I'm to ask this is, lots of people think you've got to be in London. That's where everything's going on. What do you think being in Christchurch or Bournemouth gives you as an advantage over brands or businesses that are based in London?
It's a really, really solid question. And actually, we were speaking to Adam from INCESSANT many, many moons ago. And he's such a great guy. And I was having a chat to him. And he said, do you know what, Jim, your life would be a lot easier if you just moved to London. And I was like, okay, Adam from INNOCENT Smoothies has just said we need to move to London. Suze, we need to move to London. And she was like, okay, well, let's have a little think about it. And then we thought, well, this is our life. Like, we love living here, and social media had only just kind of started when we had started. So we liked showing people pictures of the sea every day, because there's people who live in London who don't get to see the sea, but they love the sea, because everyone likes seeing the sea. And I don't think there's anyone that doesn't like seeing it. And we just thought, well, if that's a sacrifice we have to make by still having to go to London, then the sacrifice can just be the journey time. So we had a 400-pound Suzuki Wagon R, and it was the coolest car in the world. It's like a TARDIS. You can fit like a 40-ton articulated lorry's worth in the back of this car. And I used to drive up to London probably 4 days a week, and the stereo didn't work, so you just have your little earphones in and you listen to classic 90s playlist of hip hop, and you put yourself in a good mood at 5:30 in the morning, and off you go on your merry way into town. And I remember once I actually got really, really good at my time management skills and actually learning how to drive around London like a Londoner. And I managed to squeeze in 8 meetings in one day. And I just couldn't believe, because normally you just go, just going up for a meeting. But I managed to get 8 in, and I did my whole route plan. I knew that I always used to park at Westfield in Shepherd's Bush, where you can hop on the Central Line, you can work your way across east. So you kind of do this like map of doing all these people, and then you swing by this place called Zita and Zata on the way home, which is this Lebanese flatbread that they do the most amazing cheese. It's on Uxbridge Road. It's literally the best place on earth. And then get in the car and get back home, and hopefully be able to give the kids a kiss before you go to bed, and then that's it. But now, thankfully, COVID has been able to allow us just to do so much stuff online. So I can take the kids to school, and I can see them before they go to bed, and we're just about to, fingers crossed, get 2 major retailers over the line today, which is just unheard of because that just never happens. And that's just been all via Zoom. And we've been up to different retailers. I don't know how many times I've driven to Manchester to go to the Co-op, for example, where we're now listed, thankfully. But you do a 12-hour round trip, and you do like 5 hours there, 5 hours back for an hour meeting, which actually only ends up being 15 minutes because the buyer hasn't got enough time. And you're just like, oh God, my life, this is really, really tough going. But I guess that's the stuff you have to go through in the first 3 years, where you just genuinely don't know whether you're coming or going. Really
it's hard. There's so much in that. So first thing is it's almost a paradox, because in the world of Zoom, it's become much easier to just have meetings, via Zoom. We're actually going up next week, the whole sales and marketing team, up to Manchester to kind of just do brand to hand stuff, go and meet store visits, because I do think meeting in person it's almost a bit of an unfair advantage, isn't it? Because everything's going Zoom. So yeah. would you with doing that drive with those 8 meetings in one day, what's your position on meeting or trying to get things over the line in person versus Zoom? If I'm trying to think for listeners who are just starting out, where, I think I read about you going to Selfridges or it was Whole Foods and just knocking on the door relentlessly. Yeah. In a world of Zoom, yeah, where, people are just starting out, I think they should really still be doing that. But if they're in the office, right? What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a big risk to take. Like if you were to go to Whole Foods now, you don't even know whether the office is going to be open, whether the buyer's going to be there. I mean, I didn't know if the buyer's going to be there or not anyway. I was just like, this is where I'm going, and I'm going to go and talk to someone, because someone's going to listen to me, because they have to. And that was, I guess, being really ballsy back in the day. So much has changed. The FMCG landscape has changed so much, and I take my hat off to anyone who wants to start in that industry now. When you've got, it's almost like every product has been done, and it's been done 10 times by 10 different brands. There's shelves don't grow any further; they're always the same size. Thankfully, we've got direct to consumer, which is great, and I think that's a great space and a very interesting space for people. But again, that's becoming incredibly flooded very, very quickly. But I mean, you can't beat a face-to-face interaction. You can't beat when, the lady at Whole Foods who gave us the listing, she saw, I was terrified, but I was also really hungry, and you can't really get that over in a Zoom call because you can't see the rest of your body language. I'm stood there with a cardboard box with 6 iced coffees in there, which I've hand stuck labels on, that I did 25 hours in a walk-in fridge 2 days prior. And you're kind of standing there with the success of your life in their hands, because they're the next best retailer that you can have after the one Selfridges store. So you're literally like, you don't understand the importance of this meeting, and especially when it's done impromptu and when they're least expecting it, because you can't just like open your laptop and then someone be on their screen going, "Hi, thanks, nice to meet you," and they're like, "Hang on, I haven't scheduled this in." So when it's kind of a bolt from the blue, a jab in the rib, whatever you want to call it, it's that's when it gets really exciting, and they see that, wow, you really are. You do mean this, don't you? And it's quite funny when you do mentoring for people and you're like, well, how are you getting on with that account? And they're like, oh, well, I emailed them and they never got back to me. And it's like, of course they're not going to get back to you. You sent them an email. Like, you have to work. Like, how much does it mean to you? It means everything. Okay, so would you send an email to save your own life, or would you run up Snowdon completely naked? I'd run up Snowdon completely naked. Okay, good. Well, that's where you need to be looking. Like, you go and put some effort in, because otherwise people just look at you and just be like, you're so lazy.
Yeah, it's because I did the same thing with Whole Foods. I just went, I don't know, you press the buzzer and then you go up that side those long steps. It fit at the time what you said there about being terrified and hungry. I was the same thing. I just kept knocking on the doors. And you press the buzzer. I was like, I've got a meeting. And I genuinely at the time, this was like 4 years ago now, I was like, I'm going up to like, it feels like I was going into kind of purgatory whether someone was going to say yes or no. I was like, this is so scary. Yeah. And and we only got again, I suppose what we were saying there. So it took me going to the head office loads, but then fortunately, because of lockdown and this Zoom thing, is the buyers could get so much more done that we actually got the listing during lockdown. So I suppose it's kind of wrapped up what you're talking about there. It's like, yes, you need the boldness to show you're not lazy, but also lean on and be grateful for Zoom because it speeds things up loads.
Yeah, I mean, even if I got a sales pitch the other day from someone who will guarantee triple the amount of sales that we're doing on direct consumer. Like, oh, how do they know what the answer is anyway in the first place? But they put it into a video and they were like, hi, my name's Thingy. I've just been on your website. I've really got some exciting stuff. And you're like, oh, I will watch this video. But when you get emails saying, hi, Jim, don't you think it's time that you should start listening to your blah, 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 and your customers and data insight? And then you go to the bottom of the email, which I do every single time. And it says, click here to sign out, to unsubscribe from all future emails. So they've been clever in the fact that they've sent what looks like a personal email with your name on there, but it's just a blanket sales pitch. And you're just like, is that the best you can do? Because if it is, that's you being lazy. And I don't want to get into bed with anyone lazy, because if you're lazy now and I need you to do something proper in the future and you're going to be lazy, then I'm not interested. Like, at least put the most effort in so that you know that in the future, you're still going to be putting the most effort in. And it has to start at the beginning. Because if it doesn't start at the beginning, then you're not going to trust anyone.
For sure. And what you said there, I kind of just thinking out loud, I almost think the more terrified that you are, the more bold you're being in many respects. They're kind of the same side or other side of the same coin. Lots of listeners are going to potentially listen to this and think, right, I need to go and do something to get the buyer's attention or just get out there. But with that comes that feeling of being terrified. How do you deal with fear? Or how have you dealt with fear throughout the course of the Jimmy's journey?
This comes back to what you were saying about doing labouring work and doing the festival work and how you join the dots to life. And there's a very, I'm reading an amazing book at the moment that Hugh Thomas from Ugly Drinks put up on his Instagram the other day. It's called Letting Go, The Path to Surrender. And we go through tens of thousands of experiences each in our lifetime, but each experience can be attributed to, I think, like just one of 5 emotions. So you get like fear, anxiety, joy, love, and whatever else it is. And when you're dressed up as, this is just going back into festival stage, when you're dressed up in a mermaid suit and you've had 5 pints of Thatcher's cider and you're about to go and stand in front of 15,000 people, you kind of feel like, right, this is literally it. In 5 seconds, you're going to be walking out on that stage. The spotlights are going to come on, and you're going to be given a microphone, and you've got to basically introduce. And you're doing this on your own. There's no band. There's no nothing. This is it. And the guy's there with his big headphones on and his little mouthpiece, and he's like, "Okay, Jim, go." And in the 2 minutes build up to that, you're experiencing where your adrenaline is flying, and it's a knife edge of fear versus excitement, and you've got to be able to convert the fear into excitement, because you're getting that adrenaline is perfect for fueling fear, and it's perfect for fueling excitement. And if you can make the mental switch to go, instead of going, I can't actually do this, to this is going to be so fun, it just takes practice. And it's like public speaking. Like, if you were to stand up in front of the office in front of 5 people and do a presentation, some people don't like that, but the more you practice it and the more you think, turn this into something fun and something engaging and entertaining and memorable, it's actually going to be a really, really good thing. So I think that practice, and do you know what, also, as soon as you get out and those lights go on, or as soon as you go and meet that buyer or that person that you're going to, all that stuff goes away, and it's the most present that you can possibly be. And that's what I really love. Is it's very rare that you get to be in that present being state. And once all that adrenaline is worn off, it hasn't worn off, it literally just goes in a snap. You're literally just in this like flotation tank of just existence, and it's a really lovely space to be in.
I love that flotation tank of existence.
No,
That's unreal. That's unreal for a Wednesday morning. No, but it's so true. I don't know. Just to sidestep here slightly, do you meditate out of curiosity?
I've done like little bits of it. I totally understand the idea behind it and the way it works. I've never got to perfect state in that, but I've been in a lot of situations where you do know that you are, this is now is exactly what's happening now, and you're not thinking about what happened before or what's happening in the future. And I guess that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I think for people listening to this, what you said there about just seeing fear and excitement as the same thing,
yeah,
will really help people listening to this begin to take action and do more scary things. That's brilliant. And I suppose in this flotation tank of existence, it's amazing, mate. That's absolutely amazing. I love it. But it's kind of led nicely onto what I want to explore next. So again, looking through your Instagram, it's probably one of the only pages that doesn't fill me with anxiety or like dread. It's just this gorgeous eclectic mix of kind of like soul nourishing pictures of waves in the sea and surfers. So I believe there's quite a lot of parallels between surfing and business. So it's like, you know, the opportunity is the same as taking the wave, or what we just discussed then, fear, like plunging in. I'd love to know what's the best wave you've ever surfed, out of interest.
Oh, wow, that's an interesting question. Well, I mean, I'm not actually all that great at it, but I've definitely had some really fun waves. I mean, there's some waves in Tasmania that we surfed that were just ludicrous when we were out there. And then actually, do you know what? Even locally where we are down here in Bournemouth, I can get to the beach in 5 minutes just by foot. And even just a few weeks ago, I guess when you get big storms, that it changes the seabed and the shape, and it just made the shape perfect. So when you get some good groundswell to come in, this perfect wave just forms. And I guess it's more about not necessarily the wave, but the moment that you're doing it. And you find yourself there with 3 of your buddies who've also bunked off work just to go and get an hour of this fix. And it's those days when the light is ludicrous and the water is like emerald green, and you're just kind of frothing at the fact that your house is just there. You're surfing some really quality fun waves with your family and your best buddies, and you get out and you're just like, okay, I didn't need to fly to Costa Rica to get that. I just walked 5 minutes from my house. And that's when you kind of pinch yourself and go, this is actually really, really good.
I suppose that's why you didn't move to London, right? If that's from your bloody doorstep, like that just seems like the most.
Yeah, man.
It seems, I don't know, because I now live in London. It's pretty nutty. Like it's full on. Like everything's like I do think having that kind of escapism on your doorstep is beautiful. It's brilliant. And so has there been, as I said, surfing and business are kind of, I believe there are parallels. Has there been that kind of moment in Jimmy's where it could be really like warm, or it could be euphoria, where you felt like I'm so happy I'm doing this right now?
I guess the whole way I've enjoyed it, because again, if you don't enjoy something, you do need to go and do something else. And we've had ultimate highs and we've had ultimate lows. But I mean, is there a defining moment? I mean, honestly, there've just been hundreds, if not thousands, of moments, and they could just come from they could come from anywhere. Even like you find yourself sometimes when you're the last person to leave, which is kind of rare these days for me. But like you just take a look around. Like if I was if I was the only one in the office now, I would probably spend quite a long time just looking around, because I quite like looking at our space and what we've got. Like downstairs, we've got pallets of stock. I mean, I don't know how many pallets of stock we've got down here at the moment, but back in the day, we made, you'd get half a pallet made or a couple of pallets made, and you'd be so excited. And then you kind of take it for granted that pallets of stock just come in and out these days. And we had an order yesterday that was twice the order that we had for our entire year's sales in 2011. And you kind of go, wow, this is like, you should be really proud of yourself. And we very rarely pat ourselves on the back, because we've always been worried about like keeping the wolf from the door, because you never know when a listing is going to end, or you're going to get bad news. And fortunately, because we're now far more established, you get bad news, but it's only small bits of bad news. It's not like, right, you're being totally delisted because you're still too small and your rate of sale isn't great enough and you're not organized enough and you haven't got a big enough team, etc. But we're definitely in a spot now where the company's in a really, really solid place. And as I said, if you get bad news, it's something that we can most likely fix. So riding that wave is really interesting and really pleasurable, because it's amazing that we've actually just created something that's actually sensible and it's real. And I'm neither of those, but the rest of the team are, and they're just, without the team, I know everyone says without the team you're buggered, but we would be destroyed without our team. Susan and I were an amazing team at the beginning. We did everything from new product development to sales to logistics to deliveries to design, absolutely everything. And now there's 27 of us, combined, doing all of that together. And it's I'm so proud, so proud.
It's so interesting what you've said there about the kind of the best wave was the one on your doorstep, and it's like appreciating that moment. And then the best moment at Jimmy's, or not the best moment, but the moment you should appreciate it when you just look around. And I think for listeners, myself, I'm the worst at this, but you constantly think of the next thing, you constantly the next sales deck, the next meeting, boom, 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 boom. And actually, I think being able to pause and almost ask that question and be super grateful for that you are doing something you love, which is working for a brand or creating a brand, and then almost partnering that up with the question of what you said at the beginning, like, imagine what I could be doing. I could be on a building site. And I think that really reframes the anxiety lots of founders have, or people working about this, as you said, keeping the wolf from the door. That's brilliant. And then I suppose on the, if you have great waves and I suppose you have bad waves where you wipe out. What's been the hardest, I suppose, business wipeout that you've had to endure?
I'd probably, this would probably be going back to the very early stages when you're making loads and loads of mistakes. And, we had to convince our production company to continue making product for us, because they allowed us to get into debt with them. They kind of bankrolled us for a little while. And they were like, tell us why we should be making for you again when you owe us this amount of money. And we're just, you're at the mercy of them, and you kind of have to drive over to their unit over in Shepton Mallet with a fairly robust plan of how you're going to get out of the hole, and then how you're going to convince them to make another product for you again. So that, that's a particularly dark day, as is a day of, we jumped into making 1 liter iced coffee very, very quickly. And it's only just started becoming quite popular. And we thought, oh yeah, everyone will be up for buying that. And, lo and behold, people didn't. And we had a fresh product back in the day, so it was chilled and it had a 6-week shelf life. And so we had like 24 pallets of stock that was basically just going off. And we're like, right, what are we going to do with this? And Susan and I had to do however many trips in a van to go and dispose of it at a commercial recycling center. And you're just like, this is not what we want. This is not what we planned. Like today we wanted to be pitching to a retailer or doing some really, enjoyable, fun, exciting stuff. And yet we're stood here in high-vis jackets and flip-flops and hard hats, guiding a crane in to go and bin 24 pallets of stock. And you're just like, oh my God, this is real. This is absolutely real. And it's happening right now. And this fucking sucks, like really badly. But yeah, people that do ask like, well, how do you keep going? And I think we were just so hell bent on it just never failing. That was just a bump in the road, as we put it. It's just one of those things. But we've never ever thought that it's going to fail. It's always, always, always going to be all right in the end. And I think there's something very important about knowing at what point are you satisfied with what you've got. So let's say you start up a food and drink company, but your only customer can be Waitrose, and they're only ever going to give you 120 stores. So are you happy with that being your build parameter? Because when you start up an FMCG company, you could potentially go global, which means your company could be worth billions of dollars or pounds, and that's a big deal. You know, like back in the day, people didn't talk about billions. They talked about tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, and maybe a couple of million. But when you've got, you know, the richest people in the world valuing themselves at like 150, 175, 200 billion dollars, you're like, this is just ludicrous. This is utterly ridiculous. And I think it's important that people just know that, do you know what, normality is the hundreds of thousands and the millions, not the hundreds of millions and the billions. And it's amazing that some companies make it through the net. You know, you look at Vita Coco when they came on, they just exploded, and they were, I don't know, I have no idea what their valuation must be, but it must be ludicrous. But it's not, that's not a place I'd like to get to. So it's kind of knowing, like, where do you think would be comfortable? I saw in the news the other day, someone won the Euro Millions and they got like 109 million. I think if I got 109 million, I would just be shaking like a shitting dog. I'd be like, someone take this money away right now, because there are people that need this way more than I do. And granted, yeah, you take a little bit because you want to look after your family and stuff, but flipping heck, just know what's, come back to earth a little bit and just be a little bit realistic, and know that if you are only going to get Waitrose, you are only going to get 110 stores, then just work to that and just be pretty cool with that. And I think just knowing those parameters is really important.
No, I love that. It's actually pretty philosophical, and I think it's so true. It's this whole idea of chasing the next thing. It's just taking away from the presence now and the gratitude. And I think what I'm learning from you, Jim, is you do have this big, bold character and gregarious brand, but equally you bring it back to earth with kind of gratitude and being present, which I think is, for people listening to this, really try and implement that as much as possible. On the 1 liters, 1 liter kind of, not tubs, yeah. That's what we say, 1 kg tubs. I'm a proper thing. I'm speaking to a buyer now. On the 1 liter sort of packs, did you get them listed anywhere, and why did you think it failed? Because in my eyes, as I said, that worked for me, but where did it go wrong?
I think because this was, when did we do this? We did this about 9 years ago. So the iced coffee category was still small. I mean, it was growing, but it was still very small. And to convince a customer to invest in a 1 liter product when they hadn't maybe necessarily tried just even one of our single serve products was probably a little bit risky for people. And I think just those 2 facts alone were just it was just too much, too early for people. I think if we were to do it now at the right price point, it would be absolutely fine. But just back in the day, too early, too risky for consumers.
And would you go back into it?
We would, but we've made a pact that we never want to produce anything in single-use plastic again. So the carton boxes, or the 1 liter cartons, have a plastic lid. If we could get into a carton that has a pullback top, like cardboard pullback top, then we could look into that. If not, we'd try and look at a different vessel, whether it's glass, but then again, glass is really heavy. So it's not a case of just like making a fast buck where we can join a category and jump on a bandwagon. It's actually like, well, no, we've stuck to our guns now, and we only want to work in aluminium as best as we possibly can at the moment. So we can't just kind of go back on our kind of pledge to not go into the single-use plastic state.
And where I want to kind of jump into now is this keeping your chin up. Now, I remember in lockdown completely eviscerated my sort of positivity and happiness. I was not enjoying it at all. I remember on your Instagram, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're doing almost like a campaign of how to inspire people to keep their chin up. Can you remember when, like, how did that come into your world, that phrase, keeping your chin up?
Yeah, that was on the way to our designer's house when we were first designing the logo, and I thought, I don't know why, but I thought of Audi, and they have their strapline, which is Vorsprung der Technik, which I still have no idea what it means. And Apple had theirs, which I think was Think Different at the time, or however many in the 90s, that was one of their straplines. But I just thought big companies have straplines, and we're going to be a big company one day, and we need a strapline. And I just thought that keep your chin up is nice because it's got nothing to do with coffee. I guess the caffeine element has something to do with it because it kind of gives you a bit of a lift. And I guess being inherently enthusiastic about stuff, it's one of those things that you just want it to rub off on people a little bit. And physically, if you don't keep your chin up, you're going to be staring at the floor, and it actually helps with your posture. It helps with your your outward, how you look outwardly to people. We were driving to the guy's house, and I was just like, we need a strapline that's going to be keep your chin up, and that was literally it. It wasn't like brewing for ages, or it wasn't like professionally brainstormed or agency led or anything. It was just literally, this needs to be Jimmy's Iced Coffee, keep your chin up.
I love it. It's almost like the parallels with your dad finding your mum. It's like 2 days, that's it. Like I love that. It's so bold. And this video, which I just kind of discussed at the beginning of our conversation, there's 2 rap videos I've seen. Is it Who Got the Beans and Keep Your Chin Up is one, right? It's the best. Like genuinely, I was doing some research. I suppose not saying my chin was literally down, but it put me in such a good mood. It was palpable. It was unreal. I felt, it was super palpable. You've done lots of bold things. I remember being at London Coffee Festival. I think it was either 2018. I think it was 2018. And I saw this huge billboard in Shoreditch, which was like, it was you reclining with a thing like that. And it was, in your pants. Yeah. And it said pure sex in the can. It was, and it very much is in my eyes. And it's just so bold. And those videos, Keep Your Chin Up, has got over 1 million views. Who Got the Beans has got over 6,000 views. I implore anyone listening to this either now to go and watch it on YouTube or after you finish the podcast, because it's brilliant. It's a brilliant example of how to be a bold brand. But I'd love to kind of jump into the weeds on these videos. So did you write the rap? Like, how did that come about?
So we'd actually recorded we'd done a kind of piss take Snoop Dogg hip hop track when I was about 18, which is very deep in the depths of YouTube. Good luck finding it. I've always loved like old school hip hop, because I think that's a big keep your chin up kind of. It's the beat, it's the style, it's the old schoolness, it's the colorfulness of that kind of era. And I just thought, if that kind of matches Iced Coffee and it matches Jimmy's and it matches Keep Your Chin Up, I thought, what better way to represent or talk about our product in a video through creating a hip hop music track. So we were working with a really good friend of mine called Ben Little, who had a company called Fearlessly Frank, which is like an innovations agency, and his creative team kind of co-wrote the track. They did the absolute majority of it, with some other bits that I just wanted to have included in there. And it was their team and an outsourced team called Deadbeat Films that created the movie for us, or the track for us. And we did it in the space of about 3 or 4 days. And one of the highlights was actually Susan and I being upstairs and seeing 16 people come from a production house. There were gaffers and grips and lighting people and makeup artists. There were like clothing, costume people. And we were like, wow, this is on, this is happening. This is rad. And it was really, really fun. The weather was on our side. We got hold of all those classic cars. And just the team were amazing. And it felt like being on like a proper film shoot. It was just, it was so exciting. Really, really fun.
And there's something we were discussing the other day. There's like, when it comes to marketing spend and investment, you've kind of got 2 options. You can either do something that will directly target a shopper and drive rate of sale. So it could be sampling, etc., which I think is brilliant. It's measurable, but there's also this other thing we need to start measuring, which I think this video typifies, is return on emotional investment. And that video is, I don't know, kind of what was the goal for it? Was it just to generate awareness? Because you could have spent that money on doing loads of handout samplings outside Waitrose. Do you see what I mean? So why did you guys do that versus others? Because it does look quite costly.
Yeah, it's such a good question. And in hindsight, I don't ever regret doing any of the stuff that we've done. But I think what we did do is we grew the brand very, very quickly without having too much distribution. And we probably should have cut, half of that out and put it much more into shopper activation stuff like you're talking about with sampling and getting, where you got much higher return on investment. So we've been to so many music festivals where we've basically just got pissed. We've had a great time. We've done a really, really good job at sampling, mixing cocktails, delivering an exceptional experience. But would those, 5,000 people that enjoy Jimmy's that weekend, would they then go into a store that week and go, I'm going to go and grab myself a Jimmy's with that voucher that they gave me? Oh no, they're going to go, I saw Kanye West on the main stage and I had a couple of White Russians at this like Jimmy coffee bar and it was amazing. And you're like, okay, at what point do we need to stop doing all of that stuff and start focusing on stuff with a higher return? So that's what we've done in the last couple of years. We've been very much about delivering, I know it sounds really geeky, but an exceptional kind of voucher and sampling campaign. So we're not doing vouchers that are just dogged and boring, printed on really, really rubbish, thin, silky paper. We're actually doing it on we're delivering a Jimmy's experience through voucher stuff.
So how is that? So it's like, how's it an exceptional experience?
So just in terms of so how we get someone to sign up for a voucher in the first place, the microsite that they'll go through to then the actual voucher itself will be printed on really, really beautiful paper with like properly perforated edges, stuff that you can fold so you get die cut looking bottle cans. So when you get it in the post, it's printed with your name on it in a really nice like blue envelope, so it stands out amongst all the other stuff that arrives in your letterbox. And you feel like, oh, these guys have made an effort. Because whenever I get vouchers in the post, I'm just like, this is a piss poor. This is that lazy effort game that I'm talking about. And if you just put that extra bit in, people go, I'm going to go and spend that voucher and I'm going to go and do it right now because I'm already feeling good about that they've taken me on a journey and the journey's really, really fun so far, even though the fact it's just a voucher. And it's the same with doing digital stuff. And when we're sampling, we just need people who are friendly, who are knowledge up to the hilt on all of our, or knowledgeable up to the hilt on all of our products and all of the stuff about our company. But I do agree with you. There's what's the tipping point between the emotional return on investment versus the other side. I think we've done such a great job in the first instance of building the brand and getting the brand awareness out there, but we didn't do enough from a distribution perspective in terms of like getting our rate of sale up. So, and I guess once you start doing the rate of sale stuff and you see that going up, you're like, why would I ever spend anything on emotional stuff again? But it made sense doing it in the first place. And I think now we probably need to do a little bit more in that space, which we'll do this year. We're building a 5.5 meter tall bottle can rocket, essentially, which is going to be toured around 28 different venues across the UK from April to October. And there we will bring the brand to life there, and we're going to have a lot of fun. So you're mixing that emotional bit with the actual return on the investment. And that's when you get the perfect kind of like, what's it called? Just that
sweet spot. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's a blend of both. Because I mean, too much, I mean, the fun bit and the bit I love with being at Manulife is doing, the Taste of London, the foodie events. I love that. I'm a massive foodie, but I do think you need to do it. Yeah, it's a balance between return on emotional investment and return on investment, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I do think for people listening to this, because you did the early stages, is a bit you can get away with doing the bold brandy stuff. So people listening to this who are just starting out, is you've got to kind of potentially focus on that when the distribution isn't always there. Do you see what I mean? If you're not in a Waitrose or a Sainsbury's, you've got the time to do the brandy bits early. I think it's important.
Yeah, it's really, really important.
In terms, so you said just then or earlier on, I'd be buggered without my team. And I found these coffee commandments. I don't know if they're like your values. I think they're amazing. Now we've implemented values at Money Life. I spoke to Luke at Lucky Saint. They've got some awesome values of, get lucky, the devil in the detail. And I do think values can galvanize teams and manifest manifest a culture, but that's actually super hard to do. It's easy on paper, but very hard to do in practice. Now, how do you as a leader get people within your team to kind of buy into the brand? Like, how do you use values to do that and bring it to life?
So I think, well, we've got the values up on the wall. I think probably the biggest, most important one is the one where we say, speak up, don't hold it down. And that's about being as just open and honest about stuff at work. So stuff gets said and people might just be like, oh, okay, if that's the way it's meant to be, then that's fine. And they just go away and don't say anything. And we've got to a point now where I've put up a thing outside our glass box, which is our meeting room, about, do you actually need to be in this meeting? Speak up, don't hold it down, to say, look, I've had enough, I'm leaving. Or why are people blithering on? We need to keep this short, sweet. Actually, let's just stand up for this meeting, because if we sit down, we're gonna be here for double along, because it's comfortable. So I think that's probably one of the most important things from our values, along with like Yalla Habibi, which is just the Arabic term for like, let's get a move on. Let's start around. So, and then I also think, just in terms of the internal kind of culture that we've got here, is, everyone's an adult, everyone's got their jobs to do. We don't want to micromanage people. We just, this is what you need to do. Let me know how you're getting on. If you have any questions, if we can help, then we'll just get on with it. So I think it's not just the values thing, it's kind of how daily life is kind of run here, and how, we've all got kind of standing desks, and, a lot of people do sit down at them, but it's still that kind of, you're a lot higher. And if you need to go and talk to someone, you don't just go and send them an email, you just walk over to the desk and go and chat to them. I remember I did some work for Red Bull, many years ago. And my line manager, who sat opposite me, sent me an email, and I was like, I lifted my head above the screen. I'm like, I am here, and they're like, oh yeah, well, just have a look at the email and just get back to me. And you're like, this is so unbelievably wrong. This is just mad. So I think it's a mix of everything to make sure that you are, I don't know, delivering the messages that you're trying to instill into your team, but not doing it so that you're ramming it down people's throat and they've just become, because it's almost like a bit of a cult, isn't it? You're trying to get people to believe in something, and you don't want to be too corporate about it and too wanky. It just needs to be like, we want to have fun, we want to do good work, we want to grow the business, and if you want to come and do that with us, then please do it, and that would be great. And then you sow the other little bits as you go, but not being so like, I don't know, I just find it quite cheesy.
No, for sure. I completely agree. There's a kind of a delicate way of doing it. So Yalla Habibi, because I was going to ask you about that. So that means move fast, right? Because I saw that, I was like, what does that mean?
It's an Arabic term for like, let's go, darling, let's go. So
let's go, darling.
It's the fact, because Habibi means darling, and Yalla is come on. And it's and that's, that's all you'd say in Dubai. Like when you're growing up, you get into a cab and you just go, Yalla Habibi, we need to go, and they just go, Yalla Habibi, and you just
that's amazing.
And I like that. I mean, yeah, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say what you're saying about meetings, because in my opinion, the meetings really, you don't need to have meetings. You can literally send a voice note on WhatsApp is what me and Valet do, our marketing girl. We just send it on. We're like, Bosh, what do we need to do? Meetings in the startup world can suffocate Yalla Habibi in some respects. How do you guys, what's your opinion, what's your take on meetings at Jimmy's?
So we have, I mean, for me, we have our core team, which is myself, my business partner Suze, Luke, who's our ops director, and Steve, who's our finance director. So that's our core four. And we meet every Monday and Thursday at 9 o'clock, and there's no real end to the meeting. You just, if it needs to go on, it goes on. So sometimes we'll sit there for 10 minutes, we'll all be hungover, and we will just tell jokes. And if we have nothing to say, we will just leave, or just tell at least one joke. And then you'll have one on Thursday that might actually go, oh, do you know what we actually need to discuss? Okay, right, we need an hour. And then you just sit and you talk everything through. But unless you have to sit down, because if you don't get in that room, nothing ever happens, and something always good comes out of our core meet. And then we'll have, as a perfect example, so we have a sales and marketing meeting every Wednesday at 9 o'clock, and it used to be an hour, and people would deliver their bit about what they're doing, and so the e-commerce person says their bit, the brand activation person says their bit, the two creative people say their bit, the head of marketing says their bit, the shopper marketing person says their bit, the head of sales person says their bit, and then the other person in sales says their bit. And you're like, okay, this is really boring. No one cares. No one's listening. And we're not going to make this an hour. We're going to make this half an hour. And you're going to give me your 3 best bits with the most enthusiasm you possibly can. So that just changes everything up. So people are just go, okay, right. So actually, I've got nothing to say. So I'm just here to listen to what everyone else has got to say. And you're like, thank you. Don't feel like you have to bring something to the table. If it's not worth talking about, don't worry about it. So that's been really, really handy. And I think we're probably going to even chop it down to 15 and just keep it 15 minutes long. We did a 6-month appraisal yesterday with our creative content guy called Elliot. And I just said, we're just going to do this standing up, because if we sit down, we're going to be here for an hour. And so the 3 of us stood up around the table, and we just said, you know, we did the whole thing, and then we were done. And it just makes life so much easier. Just jazzing it up. Just
sure.
People along. Let's just carry on.
No, love it. And I think we could probably implement some of that in Money Life as well. In I think all businesses can. Then meetings can, as you say, they can bring out and flourish great ideas, but they can at the same time, if there's too many, well, they just cancel Yalla Habibi, and I think we all want to be listening, you know, doing Yalla Habibi. Yeah. Then there was another one which I thought really interesting, which is take a drive. I don't know if you still have got that up there. Yeah. So I'm a bit of a freak. Like throughout lockdown, like I would just go on these drives. I love going on drives, and because all these ideas come to me on a drive. I don't get ideas in a meeting. I don't get, you know, even prepping for this. I was, you know, go on a drive. This is where the ideas kind of come. And there's a really interesting entrepreneur called Sarah Blakely who set up Spanx. It's like she made billions from it, I think. And it's like a woman's clothing wear. And her office was 15 minutes away from work, but she would purposefully take every day and drive for an hour before she got into work. And she basically said, I'd go into the office, have a coffee on the drive, and come up with all these ideas. Why do you love taking drives, and why do you encourage the team to do that?
So I personally love taking drives because I've driven so much in my life, and I don't mind it. I actually enjoy it. Some people hate driving and some people love it. I've grown to not like it as much because I have done so much of it. But in general, the idea of taking a drive for going for a drive's sake is lovely. And I used to have a scooter, and I used to love I'd just say, I'm just going for a scoot, and I just get on it was like a really cool like off-road scooter thing, and I just go buzzing off. And I've got an old Mercedes estate, which is it's the most wonderful car to drive. And it's got the steering wheel is huge, and it's just a 4-speed manual. It's very, very basic. It looks lovely, and that's a really lovely thing, a really pleasant kind of riding experience. But I think the terminology from take a drive doesn't necessarily mean to go and actually get in a car. It could be go for a walk, or just go and get some headspace and go and find some time to go and have a bit of time for you. And I've done that before, when I remember I think I had a fallout with Suze over something, and I just went into the forest and I just ditched the car on a lay-by, hopped over the fence, and just went for a massive walk. I remember lying down on a fallen tree trunk and just lay there and just looked up at the sky for a good half an hour. And it was my perfect, like, I reasoned with myself, I reasoned with my sister in my head, just did everything, and just solved all of the problems that I had there and then went back. And that would normally take 3 or 4 days of dwelling on it and losing sleep. Whereas if you just go and nip it in the bud and go and do something for you at that particular point, it's just so important. And even I've got a 5-month-old baby, and just recently I've been in charge of taking her out on the promenade in her pram. And that's just, that's also a version of taking a drive, because you have 15 minutes just to go and completely clear your head, check out the sunrise, enjoy the fresh air, and just have your time. So I think that that idea is just having go and take some time for you. It's important.
Definitely. And on the ask forgiveness, not permission. That's one I actually have as one of my values. I think it's the way to do it. I suppose what you're doing with Whole Foods, just rocking up. Has there been a way, like, ask for forgiveness, not permission? How do you encourage that within the team? Is that in terms of winning listings? Like, how do you espouse that?
So we use it a lot for events. So just turning up to places and start sampling product, or just doing because I think a lot of people feel like within work that it has to be done through a contract, or it has to be done properly, because otherwise you can get into trouble. And they don't want to get in trouble. But we would praise someone who was ballsy and got thrown out of something, but they still managed to get a few samples out because it's cost us nothing. And we when people are talking about certain situations, like, I've got this situation, I'm not really sure what to do, we just say, just go and do it anyway, and just don't tell anyone, and then come back and let us know how you get on. And if you fail, it doesn't matter. It was really fun that you tried anyway. And I will never forget doing Taste of London, or Spirit of Summer, at Olympia. And we got the rate card was like $4,000, and I was like, I'm just not paying that. But the audience that's there is what I want. I want that audience. And I took a refrigerated van and I parked up outside Taste of London as soon as it closed for the day. And I opened up the side door and I just screamed free iced coffee. And I got rid of about at least 1,500, maybe 2,000 cartons in the space of about 15-20 minutes. And by which time the security guard finally caught up with me and said, mate, you can't be here. And I was like, I'm not here, I'm gone, because I've done it. I've done all the work I can do, and I got out of there. And it was just like, and you tell small startups that, and they're like, oh, how did you do that? And you're like, dude, you will do that. That's what you're going to need to do in order to get your shit off the ground, because you don't have $4,000 to go and spend, or you don't have 4 days of your own time to go and stand under artificial light telling people about stuff where they can't even buy a product from. So just get busy going and doing something. So that's
I love that.
Yeah, and it's fun, and that's what gets your heart rate up, and that's where your fear and excitement blend into one little pot, and that's the adrenaline bit.
I love all that stuff. That's the funnest bit. Cool. So Jim, I'm really, really enjoying this. Conscious of your time though, so I want to kind of wrap up with several questions that I ask most guests on this podcast. So the first, and everyone has said this, Charlie Bigham,
love Charlie.
Mark Palm. Yeah, he's an absolute legend. They all say going from 0 to 1 million retail sales is the hardest. It's like the trough of sorrow, if you want to, quite a morbid way of saying things, but it's really, really hard. If you were to go on that journey again, what would you potentially do differently, and why?
What we've just been speaking about in terms of emotional return on investment versus actual return on investment, I probably would have spent a little bit more time dedicated to getting rate of sale up in the stores that we were for sale in. So, and to be honest, we did actually do that. So there's not many things I regret doing. But for example, with Selfridges, when we launched, I stayed on a mate's sofa in Old Street for a month, and I became a member of staff at Selfridges. So I checked in through the staff entrance. I put my apron on. I said hello to security guards, and I went upstairs and I stood behind my sampling table, and I just told people about Jimmy's for a month. Did it from 9 till 5, and I'd always go and treat myself to Brass Rail salt beef bagel at lunch, which is like 12 quid. I had no idea why I was spending so much money.
Is that in the food court? In the food court bit? Oh, it's unreal. It's unreal. Yeah.
It was the only thing that could kind of save my sanity, because Oxford Street is like one of the worst places on earth. Despite asking my wife to marry me there, but she said yes, so that's good. But then, I think, and also we've got a like one of our sayings is like sleep on it or take 24, and just not rushing so much in the first year or that first million. You don't need to rush. And I know it feels like you need to rush, but if you just allow just a little bit more time to think about something, the chances are you'll get that job done quicker than making mistakes in making it. Do you know? Does that kind of make sense?
God, I'm the worst at that. Yeah, I'm something I constantly have to try and work on is that having a pause in between. I'm so action orientated that me stopping to actually think about things is really difficult.
Just working out that, and I hate this kind of LinkedIn jargon, but that path of least resistance, rather than thinking, oh, I need to get there and this is going to be really tough. Actually, well, is there not another way around that we could go? And just having that extra breathing space to get the job done will save you time and money and heartache and blood and sweat and tears.
For sure, but equally, it's a balance, because you need to be bold and just be like 3, 2, 1, fuck it, I'm going up to Whole Foods in some respects. But I suppose it's again what I'm taking from this conversation. Everything's a bit more nuanced and balanced, which I think is really interesting. Awesome. And so I want to end, I suppose we started with your old man and your time in Dubai, and he almost taught you to be bold. What's the advice you give to your kids as they're about to embark on the world?
I really they're just the most beautiful people on earth, and seeing them at their happiest is when I'm happiest. Not when they come back and they say they won a maths competition or whether they did X, Y, and Z. Just seeing them be beautifully innocent and happy is what drives my happiness. And I think I would never want to push my kids into doing anything. I just want to make sure that they're totally just happy doing what they're doing, and also just being a little bit curious, because if you're not curious, you can't see what's around the corner, or you might think, oh, this is what life is about. Is this it? And you kind of want to just keep them a little bit hungry and a little bit curious. And as long as it's and just actually just going back to the basics of what life is about, which is just hanging out with your kids and having time. Time. That's one thing that Elon Musk is never going to get any more of than anyone else, and that's a wonderful thing that we all only have a limited time, and you just got to make the best of that. And that's really from having hugs with your kids and smiling and surfing with your buddies at your local break, and that just sounds great.
No, for sure. Amazing. Final 2 questions, and this is something we actually we're chatting about before we hit the record button. But you've got your own podcast all about surfing, which is epic. And you said you'd interviewed a lady called Bethany Hamilton. If I said that right? Yeah. And she had one of her arms bitten off by a shark. She sounds super interesting. What are some of the things she taught you?
Oh, I mean, there's a movie about her called, it's either Unbeatable or Undefeatable, something like that. And it just, I mean, when you think about, I'm having a really hard day today, you're like, no, you're not. You are absolutely fine, mush. You just carry on. And it's that thing of where people go, when you get into a dark place, how you climb out of that hole and then actually defeat everyone else. You're like, okay, that's really, really quite cool. So I think just the lessons there are just have a little word with yourself, because you're absolutely fine. And I bitch and whinge sometimes to my wife about stuff, and she's so sympathetic. But then the next day I'll wake up and I'll be like, God, I'm such a whinge bag. I'm really sorry for whinging. It's uncalled for. I'm absolutely fine. I'm healthy. I've got you. I've got my kids. The business is fine. I've got nothing to whinge about. So I take it all back, and everything's great.
Amazing. And you discussed about this book you're reading called Letting Go, which she recommended from Ugly. Are there any other books that you would recommend to listeners who are probably like you were in 2011, starting out again?
You know what? I just didn't have time back in the day to reading books and listening to podcasts and going to networking events. I just didn't have time for any of that. The only thing I probably did have time for was podcasts, but they didn't really exist 11 years ago. And again, I actually needed motivation to get up, and that's why I'd listen to hip hop. rather than like a Joe Rogan podcast, because that's not going to get me out of bed. But like Holiday by like the OPP guys, Naughty by Nature, is gonna get me up out of bed. And so yeah, I'd go to like you have to go and do a talk at a networking event, and you see people there and they're like, so Jim, have you got any advice on how? It's like, don't be here is my advice. If you want to get out there and do stuff, don't be here. You stop networking, get off your ass and go and do something busy, because right now you're swanning around with a shit glass of warm orange juice talking to someone that you don't need to talk to. Now just go and get out.
That is so true. No, mate, I love it, because I think I'm completely against networking events. I think it's the most boring tripe in the world, just walking around in like stuffed up suits, surfing through some beige naff biscuit selection. It's just horrendous. But I remember listening to a podcast actually with the comedian Jerry Seinfeld, and he was doing a talk on how people could become comedians. The fact he gets up on the stage and just says, walk out the door right now. At the whole point, you need to just not be here. You need to start doing the work, doing the club nights. And I think that's one of the kind of the central themes from this conversation is just almost say 3, 2, 1, whether you're paralyzed with fear or terrified, see it's excitement, just go and take action and do it is one part of the kind of conversation. But then to balance that out, it's about being present, focusing on the small things, looking around, as you said, and being grateful that you're not doing something hellish like a labourer with a geezer with his bum out. Do you know what I mean? It's
100%.
Awesome. Mate, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's really nice to be actually mentally dragged out of my day to day, and remembering skating at American University in Dubai is actually the highlight of my day so far, and I don't think that's going to be topped. So thank you very much indeed too.
No worries. Awesome. Thanks, mate. Just gonna hit